Hi, dear friends. This is Silver from Rome, and it's really nice to be here with you again tonight after the very nice experience with the meditation with Ruth Anderson. It was really very, very interesting and very powerful as well. And I'm here tonight. It's night here in Italy. It's 10 p.m. I think it's very early for you in other parts of the world. But tonight I would like to share with you a very interesting concept, which is trust, which is a very, very difficult thing to achieve, I believe, for many people. At least it was very difficult for me. But not trust in general, because when we talk about trust, that we immediately start thinking about other people, whether we trust other people, whether we can trust our teachers or our caregivers, even our parents, our friends. No, I'm talking about the real trust, which is the trust in ourselves. Because I believe that if we do not have trust in ourselves, we cannot actually trust other people really deeply. And how can we build that trust in ourselves? Children are very confident in general. I'm talking about healthy children, children who live in loving families with a normal life, generally have this enormous curiosity about the world, that they're very confident about their abilities, about the fact that they want to explore. But at a certain point in growing up, sometimes this confidence goes away, wanes, for many, many reasons. Because parents, caregivers, schools, educational system in general do not really work to make people really confident, either because they have not learned the real techniques to do that, or they themselves do not believe in their abilities, and that they don't know who they are, where the system is, for example, based on competition rather than cooperation, which frequently happens, for example, in schools in Italy, where there is a lot of competition rather than cooperation, and or for many other reasons, people become adults having forgotten how to trust themselves. So as a result, they may not trust other people. They may not trust their caregivers or teachers or bosses or politicians or religious people, and so all the rest of the world. And they don't trust the universe. They have a limiting belief about who they are, about the universe, about their potential and their real nature, which is a shame, because we are multidimensional beings, very powerful beings who are able to really create heaven on earth. And instead it is as if we play a little part instead of being protagonists. So how can we regain trust in ourselves? That was the question that brought me to many courses, to study religions, to study philosophy, to be interested in science, because I think that that is a basic question. Who am I? How can I trust myself? How can I thrive in this life? So for me, this was a pivotal issue. And it is an issue I have been working on for a long, long time. I'm still working on it every single day. But now, of course, I'm more confident because I have more instruments, more tools at my disposal to go back to a situation, a level of trust, of trust in the universe, of trust in myself. how did I build that? Well, I took many courses. Meditation really helped me because meditation allowed me to know myself more deeply. I had no idea who I was, why I had come to Earth, what my potential was. I knew that I had some potential, that I was good at my work, that I was a great writer, that I was very good with animals, that I was very happy in nature. So I knew certain things, but I really did not expect, did not even imagine how powerful and how expansive we can be, even on Earth in our three-dimensional existence. And then, over the course of the years, I learned some energy techniques and other techniques to build that confidence. And this has been really precious for me. And but there is one technique I would like to share with you tonight, which is very simple to do, but you need a little bit of perseverance. Um, it is how to be able to trust ourselves on the basis of the messages coming from our higher self. So, since we are multidimensional beings, part of our being does not live in the three-dimensional world, and it is not limited by space or time. And it can live in the fourth or even in the fifth dimension, where everything is flow and synchronicity. So this higher intelligence resides at that level where there is no polarity, where there is no good or bad, black and white, where there is no conflict, no war, where everything is really connected. And so from that level, we can receive messages to carry out things here in our three-dimensional existence. And we can ask, we can be able to ask our higher self for anything we would like to know. But how can we do that? I learned this very simple technique, which you have to do for at least 1 month, 1.5 months, let's say 6 weeks. I say this because now science has shown that in order to create a habit, you really need some time for the brain to become wired so that you can sustain that habit and it becomes completely integrated into you. It is as if you are riding a bicycle. The learning curve at the beginning seems to be really long, but one day we can start riding the bicycle and then it's like a miracle. So how's it possible? 2 days ago I was still falling and I'm falling off my bike, and now I can actually ride the bike with confidence. It is because the brain now has become wired so that we can sustain that habit, and that habit can become integrated. In fact, when we learn to do something, as for example, riding a bike, we never forget. It remains with us throughout our lives. And this is really amazing. But we can actually trust ourselves exactly in the same way. So we need at least 6 weeks of daily work in order to understand how our higher self, our higher intelligence speaks to us. And the best way to do it is to ask questions about unimportant things at the beginning. So things that were not going to change your lives. For example, you would not ask your higher intelligence for the outcome of a marriage or whether you have to change a job. So these are very important issues. And if we learn how to trust our higher intelligence, this higher self will guide us to make the right decisions, even in very difficult periods of our lives. So, but we have to understand how to get connected to that intelligence. And the best way to do it is to practice for a period of 6 weeks, as I said, with very simple questions, yes or no questions, no open questions, but about very usual things. For example, am I going to drink coffee? And then we wait and we see what happens. We can, relax and start feeling what happens. If we have any feeling in our body, if we have an inner knowing, or whether we hear a message, even if we do not hear it with our hearing system, if a thought comes to our mind. So at a certain point, an answer is going to arrive. So we can practice with many simple things, maybe a couple of times or 3 times during a day per day for 6 weeks. Another important thing is not to use any divinity techniques. By divinity techniques, I mean the pendulum cards, or for example, body tests. You can actually, for example, use the muscular test, or the test with the fingers to see whether something is true for your body or not. So, or for example, the slight movements of the body, forward and backward. We don't have to use these techniques. We just have to relax and try to see how the answer is arriving to us, because each person has a different channel, has a different way of receiving messages. Very often, I receive messages with an inner knowing. So I know that something is true for me. So I don't know why, but I can trust myself, because this is how I receive the messages. At the beginning, it was strange because, of course, asking about unimportant things, my ego was, intervening and say, oh, but that's easy. So you may not trust what this message is about. But then over time, the ego started seeing that my behavior in line with the higher intelligence was more protective for me. And ego is very useful in life, because the ego protects our, basic needs and basic surviving skills. So the ego is very protective, and the ego hates change and wants always to keep us in a status quo. So it's so that everything is under control. So the ego has a role in our lives. So we should not say, I want to completely dismiss my ego. The ego is very useful, but the ego should not dictate its own agenda. So we have free will, so we are able to decide. And if we decide wisely, according to the higher self and according to the higher intelligence, the ego sooner or later, and I say sooner, understands that it is more protective for us to follow the real guidance rather than, sometimes choosing wrongly. So very quickly, the ego adapts and likes and actually follows suit. So we no longer have an enemy, but we have an ally, which is great. So if we practice with this method for an extended period of time, we are able to understand how we receive messages. And another thing I didn't say, we have to act upon the message we have received. For example, am I going to drink coffee or not? If the answer is no, we are not going to have any coffee. If the answer is yes, we're going to have coffee. Because if we do not follow up on on the message we receive, we cannot actually create trust, because we have to understand what happens after we have followed upon a message. And we can have a lot of evidence about this if we ask other questions. For example, we can ask our angels or our guides if they can show us the results of that decision. Sometimes the results are very clear. let's say that the same question. I always use the image of coffee because I love coffee very much, and sometimes I drink too much coffee. So that is a relevant question for me. But let's say we ask question: am I going to have coffee or not? And the answer is no. But the smell of coffee is so good that we take coffee, and then we have stomachache. That is the evidence we have to look for. That is the message. So that is what happens if we do not follow the guidance of our higher intelligence. So something is not going to be okay, or not as better as if we had followed its advice. So that is very important. And if we practice, we can start really trusting a higher guidance, which is a wonderful way to go through life, because it's like having an all-knowing, all-loving, very wise friend. And a friend that is not judgmental, a friend that is there to help us, to guide us, to show us the way, which is wonderful. And then once we build this trust, we can start asking very difficult questions. So am I going to stay in this job, or am I going to have another job, or am I going to stay in this marriage, or should I date that guy, or should I have a baby, or is this the right time for me to have a baby, whatever. So important and topical issues. But once we have created this trust, we can really follow the advice coming from our higher self, which is very important, because that part of us does not live in the three-dimensional world in which we live physically. It is connected to everything else, to the quantum field, to the field of, any possibility. And so there are so many solutions that can come from our higher intelligence that we are not able to find in this more limited existence that we have here on Earth. And if we do this on a regular basis, we can start seeing that we move back and forth from the third to the fourth to the fifth dimension, and so we can really experience heaven on Earth. We can ask our guides or angels to help us create heaven on Earth every single day. We can do this with an intention in the morning and say, please, God, or whoever you want to call upon, guides, angels, ancestors, invisible helpers, or higher intelligence source, whoever, I ask to live a day of heaven on Earth. And every single day you can ask for the same thing. And in the end, you're going to have heaven on Earth, because when we pray, when we ask, we are given. And this is a wonderful experience that I've had. At the beginning, it was very difficult for me to ask. But then I know that if I do not ask, I will not receive, but not because we don't have the guides, we don't have angels, or we don't have invisible helpers who support us. As a father, we have free will, and so they can intervene only if we ask them. And it's great to know that they're there and we can ask them. So once we build that confidence, we can actually be more trustworthy vis-a-vis other people, but also we start believing in other people, but also believing in our higher selves, in our higher possibilities, and this expansion of our being, so we can better understand who we are, so we can become more self-confident, which is extremely important for everything, because we need to trust ourselves. And if we have self-confidence, we're also more lenient towards ourselves, because we make fewer mistakes. And this is really very protective for all of us and for our egos. So we live better, and we are happier and more joyful and more peaceful. And this is really the objective of our lives. While I was preparing this talk, I remember something that happened to me when I met Mother Teresa. I met Mother Teresa during a work assignment I had as an interpreter. And I met her just a couple of years before she passed away. She was already very old and very small, a little bit curved, but her eyes were like, the stars of the universe. It was incredible to perceive the light coming from her eyes. And when I saw her, I had this feeling that, because people say that a faith is a gift, in the sense that many people who are, strong believers in God or in any other things, but there is a strong belief and who have faith, generally live better because they can trust that there is somebody there helping them. And many people believe not because they really believe, but because they were taught that they should believe. And I think that many religious people fall in this category. But what I felt in this woman is that she actually did not believe, she knew. That was the difference. That was the real difference I felt when I looked at her. She knew. That's the difference between, she believed because she knew. That was the difference. And that is what is going to happen if we start building confidence, because in the end, you know what you are receiving, you know what messages you are getting from your higher intelligence, and you know the evidence of the actions that have followed that particular advice. So that was the impression I had of Mother Teresa, that she was not a woman of faith because of belief. She was a woman of faith because of knowledge. She knew. She knew the source. She knew spirituality. She knew love. That is really, she had already the experience of that, which is incredible. And I think this must be the most incredible thing for any human being, because we come from there, and acknowledging, remembering that is so important for all of us. But for many people, this is so difficult. This is so difficult because I think because a lack of trust in who we really are. So experiencing through these techniques, through meditation, through prayer, who we really are, can really open up just a new world for us, which is our real world, a world in which we can become expansive and we can flow. We live through synchronicities. Life becomes really magic if we open up. But we can only open up if we trust ourselves. So these are the techniques I wanted to share with you today. And I hope that you are going to practice them. So I repeat very quickly, which are the rules. So the rules are yes or no questions to your higher self. You have to ask these questions every day, a couple of times per day for 6 weeks. No divinity techniques to understand whether the answer is the right one. Just allow ourselves to receive the messages in the way in which our higher self is going to speak to us. Everyone has a different kind of channel. So we can receive messages in many different forms, provided that a channel is okay for you, it's fine. Some people, for example, feel an answer through smell or through taste, others through goosebumps, so through the touch, others through, you know, our hearing system, others through the mind, others through the heart. It doesn't matter. It's provided that we receive these messages. So these techniques are really wonderful. Oh yes, another thing. So 6 weeks of practice in order to allow your brain to wire up for that kind of habit, and always follow up on the suggestion you're given. So if the message is do not drink coffee, don't drink coffee. And this is the message I receive now, because it's late in the evening. I would love to have coffee, but I'm not going to have it. Otherwise, I'm not going to sleep. This is the message that I have received now. So with this, I would like to say ciao to all of you. And I'm looking forward to hearing from you. Bye.